James, thank you very much indeed for accepting my invitation to take part in this podcast. And the reason I've invited you principally is because you're a really interesting person who has a great story, great passion, and does great things. But I also recognize that because you're an ambassador for James's Ark, and we'll find out a little bit more about that, I think this provides a great platform to talk about what you actually do as an organization. And of course, your own experience and what you do as an organization are interlinked uh, to a large degree, which I'm sure we will find as we explore this podcast. So thank you very much indeed for accepting the invitation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Tim, as well.
Can I start a little bit? I mean, we've known each other for a while. We did a bit of collaboration last year as you were just setting up James's Ark and setting up the website and stuff like that. But you've actually been involved in this work. It's kind of emerged over a long period of time. James Ark is certainly not a new thing. Do you want to give us an introduction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go right back to the roots
Hmm.
without giving too much away of the personal story. So realised there was, I'll say, a gap in the market when I went through something in my life. And it started off just as an Instagram page to rant away. And got to a stage where I thought, it can be more than this. Let's try and work with services um, rather than trying to pull services apart. So I set up a helpline, and I used actually from the basis of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, which is quite a proven method.
Hmm.
Um, so I set up a helpline. Then I started a support group, which was back in November 2020, the first support group. The helpline started in April 2020.
Hmm.
I remember at that point it was, the phone rang for the first time. You sprint to it like, oh, there's a call, there's a call. Um, Now, God, yeah, we're getting this year. I'd say, well, last month in January,
Hmm.
we received over 300 calls.
Hmm.
And these aren't just, someone can call 7 times a day if they're in crisis, and we just have to talk them down, speak to them, give them a little bit of advice. I mean, we always say we don't give legal advice because we're not lawyers. So
Hmm.
if it's more complex, we'll refer them to a lawyer. So we've grew and grew. I mean, you've been very helpful with helping us kind of with our projects and putting things in a little bit better order for us, which we're really grateful for that. So we have the mentoring, which is similar like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. They have sponsors, so
Hmm.
we've called them mentors without stealing.
Hmm.
So we have the mentors who do a one-to-one. I mean, we've only got two people at the minute, myself, and we've got a gentleman who we just hired at the end of last year who's doing 15 hours for us.
Hmm.
That seems to be going really well. So yeah, it's building. There's
Hmm.
a massive need for it, more than I actually really thought, and it's just continuing to grow at the minute. So we offer the well-being stuff as well on top of that. We offer the court support. So if you can't afford a lawyer, what we do is we sit with them in the courts as a Mackenzie friend.
Hmm.
Um, Again, we can't give legal advice. We can just offer guidance, support, help them with their notes. We help them with court documents as well. We've just recently started doing family plans as well, which has been really beneficial, which I'll touch on that a bit later on. So yeah, I mean the well-being stuff. We had our first retreat, which we use Russ Alchin and Luke Billings. So Luke does all the mindfulness meditation. Russ does the ice baths and the breathing, the Wim Hof breathing. And I remember standing there. It was the first one we'd put together, and it was up at the Cattell Fort. And I remember standing there looking around, and just seeing, these people had been through such, and I don't like to use the word trauma a lot because it can get thrown around quite a lot, but they'd been through trauma. And I feel trauma is something where it's a prolonged period of stress. And these guys had been through the mill. And I looked around and I seen they're all smiling, they're all happy. And the day was just perfect. Everybody showed up. Everybody got something from it, and the feedback was brilliant. So I mean, we want to try and run a couple of them again this year, but we want to include more mothers as well along with that.
Mhm. So just as a sort of overview, but please do expand on this. I mean, James's Ark supports separated families, and it's principally seen as supporting fathers, but as you just touched on, a family is an entire unit of which, a father is a component. So your support stretches beyond just supporting fathers through separation and actually supporting the whole family. What are typically the types of issues that arise where somebody would contact you and James's Ark?
So this year, I
Hmm.
didn't even push this. I just in my mind I thought we
Hmm.
can't help the fathers to the impact we want to help the fathers without the mothers.
Hmm.
So we've had quite a few mothers getting in contact.
Hmm.
And what will usually happen is either a father will call or a mother will call, and we've had 50% of mothers, 50% of fathers in January
Okay.
calling the helpline for support, which has been brilliant. Asking it, and it will be answered, right?
Hmm.
So the someone will call, they'll explain their situation, what's going on. We'll ask them for consent to call the mother and speak to the mother or email the mother and get her side of events, right? You can't just get one side of the story. The mother will either respond or
Hmm.
she won't respond. She'll say, "I have a lawyer. I don't want, I don't want to work with James Ark." So we'll then either engage with the lawyers or we will do our own. Either hopefully it doesn't go to the court.
Hmm.
Last resort is the family courts. So we want to try and mediate. We want to try and encourage co-parenting. We want to try and empower both the parents. And what I've been doing is I've been contacting the mothers. I'll send them a really polite email, empowering the mother,
Hmm.
understanding that both parents should be seen as equal, but sometimes the mother may be the primary carer, so
Hmm.
she may have done all of the work with the child. So we try and empower the mother, bring them on board. And this January we had quite a lot of success. So we met quite a few mothers face to face. We sat down with them. We tried to come up with a co-parenting plan. We've had kept 4 cases out of court now, where they've worked together. And one of them's agreed a 50-50 family plan. And that seems to be going well. The mothers will. I've just put some feedback on the website from 2 mothers who've worked with us, and they've either emailed or called us and said, can I meet for a chat? This is now going on, and you can just have that in between rather than not feeling alone and saying, look, we're here to support both of you, and that's what I try and emphasize to them. We want to help both of you for the children. We're not taking sides. We're not pro fathers. We're not pro mothers. We're pro child. So the reasons it was set up for fathers was the fact was obviously I was a father.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't feel it was a nice process as a father for me. So again, this is what we're trying to change in a sense of just realizing that we're all human beings. We all want the same thing. We all want what's best for our children. Um, so it's I realized when I looked into this that a lot of fathers lose contact with their children after a breakup,
Hmm.
and it is often the fathers who lose the contact. And we've had actually a mother recently who's lost contact, so we're offering her the same support.
Hmm.
But that's why the statement is to kind of around trying to end fatherlessness, because you look at the impact it has on the children long term as well. But this year we're really aiming to work with the family as a whole.
And one of the things that you touched on in the introduction is that you've been doing this since around 2020. And
Yeah,
I certainly know from my experience working alongside you, as we created some establishment around the website and processes and procedures, you do an awful lot. I'm really interested in the mechanics of setting up a charity because you started this as a sort of part-time thing in your spare time. It's now pretty much your full-time occupation. For anyone who's interested and has a passion about any type of charitable endeavor, what's been your learning over the last 4 years? What would you what advice would you give to you 4 years ago, for example?
Get a structured plan
Hmm.
and get advice from somebody who has set up a charity
Hmm.
and then come up with a structured plan. I mean, I've done it the hard way. I've chopped and changed and trying to find what pieces fit where. We set and also getting a good committee, a good board behind you who you trust, who have the same vision for you. I
Hmm.
think a lot of it was because I had so many people I needed to support. I just wanted to get it over the line, and I rushed things and okay, you can come on, you sound good, you can come on the committee, you sound good, but it's making sure that everybody's on the same page, everybody has the same vision. Um, so it's finding that, and I would say take your time with it. It shouldn't be rushed. If I had to go back, obviously I've got a lot of experience now. So I mean, when people come to me and say that looking to set up a charity, I'm more than happy to support people and give them that advice and guidance. I mean, I've given my whole business plans to people.
Hmm.
Some people probably wouldn't do that. But I think if someone else is doing it and they can do it better than me, then brilliant. So go for it. Because it's about helping people. It's about trying to make a difference in the world.
Well, and what are your sort of personal learnings? How have you changed over the last 4 years?
I've got which I never thought I would have. I have a business head on my shoulders. I've realised I'm actually quite a good leader. I don't, bringing in a staff member. I don't micromanage, but I do want things done to a particular because it's, I've built this. So I do believe people need to be on the same vision as me.
Hmm.
I don't go out my way to challenge people, but if I believe I need to, I will. But there's a way about doing it. I like to try and do things in a professional manner. Um, Everything through James's Ark. Um, I've realised that initially when I first set up the Instagram page, it was Father Support Group, and it was it was anti-system,
Hmm.
because I'd been scorned, you could say.
Hmm.
But I realised that's not going to work, and that isn't me as a person. That's not what I've been taught as a person. It's not my values. So I stepped away from that, and I thought, you're not going to change the system by attacking it. I mean, you look at Fathers for Justice; it's got nowhere. um, you know, and they just badmouth mothers, they badmouth the system, and it's not going to change like that. So, in order to try and change the system or work with the system, it is actually getting in with people, working with them, and one of the main things is really trying to like support people that are going through it, right? Because if you can't, if you can't get their children back for them, or there's been something that's happened, it's sometimes it's just keeping these guys alive,
Hmm.
and just keeping them alive, and you can see that. I mean, some of the guys are really in a dark place, and there are actually quite severe mental health issues which have happened. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's you've seen these some of these people, they've been normal family men, um, loving fathers, and and there's been a divorce. They've lost a home, they've lost a wife, they've then lost children, they've then lost a job, and then they've then lost their minds. And that's factual stuff I've witnessed with a lot of people. Um, and sometimes, I was getting a little bit frustrated with somebody the other day, and I thought to myself, do you know what? You're not going to change this because I like to fix things, right? um, and I thought, do you know what you're doing? You just have to just try and keep them alive.
Hmm.
Sit on the phone, because sometimes I'll say I probably wouldn't do that, and that's probably not the best thing to be doing, and they wouldn't like to be hearing that. So I'm thinking, well, this guy's not really going to listen,
Hmm.
so just be there. You just listen to him, listen to what he's got to say, and let him know you're there, you care about him. Let's meet for coffee. yeah, I mean, sometimes that's just how it is.
And I'm interested that you work on a very empathetic, but also, quite cognitive as well. I mean, you're managing stakeholders, you're raising funding, you, as you say, have a business head on you, but you're also empathetic, available, deeply caring. How do you manage yourself? How are you all those things to all those people, and how do you cope?
Yeah. Oof. I knew this would come up with you, to be fair. Do you know what? It can be quite emotional.
Mm,
I mean, we had a few you know, welfare calls the other day where we had to, I'd had a very tough call.
mm,
There was a suicide attempt. We've had to get the police down. We've had quite a lot of these as well. And I don't think people really know how much the charity does. And I mean, I've only just got a staff member on in December to do
mm,
15 hours. We need probably a lot more staff, but getting
mm,
the funding for that is proving quite difficult. But the work we're doing is crucial, For myself, so January, um, I dedicated this year to being a bit more kinder to me. Last year, I totally put myself probably fourth, fifth, sixth
mm,
place. Um, as a father, my children are my priority. Some people may not agree with that, but
mm,
you need to put yourself first. A lot of people say, but my children are my priority. So in the mornings I'll get up and they're ready,
mm,
then I'll get ready, right? Make sure they're fed, then I'll feed myself. So then you've got your partner. So I have to make sure my partner's looked after, and I've got a dog now, so I've added that into the mix. So I've got to walk the dog. Very busy. So this year I've said, right, you need to be doing stuff for you. So I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the mornings. I'm looking after me in the mornings. I go out for a run. I've started getting back running. Best thing for my mental health always was running. I noticed the impact it has on me after a run.
And
I,
I know this, you're a phenomenal runner.
I was, yeah, having the time now to do it, but it won't take me long to get the cobwebs off. So I love it. It's one. I remember hearing a quote where running is like getting drunk in reverse. So you go out for a run. It's horrible. You get in your shoes on. 5 o'clock. It's dark. You don't really. You get out there the first mile or two. Oh, but then when you finish, 100% always feel better.
Mhm,
Um, so my brother's doing the half next month. So I thought that gives me something to latch onto. I have to get out. If he's out there, I'm accountable. So I
yeah.
go out there with him. And then we went in the sea, and I've done ice baths before. It was colder than an ice bath to sea the other day. It was freezing. I'm not going to tell you what I looked like when I was in there, but I wasn't masculine. I was like, ooh. But we had to do the 2 minutes, so we done it. And yeah, so fitness for me is top of the list. I do gratitude journals. Sometimes I go to the church, and if I've been to the gym, I go and do weights in the gym, and I'll go to the church after and pay my respects.
Mhm,
Um, because I believe like prayer, whatever you call it, it can be you're speaking out to the universe, whether that's God or whatever you believe in. You can call it an affirmation. And just even just saying something for your family and for people you care about and you love, it kind of takes a load off of you, and just sometimes it gets it letting go, isn't it, really, sometimes I think. But that's other things for my well-being. Looking within, self-reflection. I'm always critical of myself.
mhm,
And I, again, some people might not agree with that, but I like to kind of, I always want to do better.
mhm,
I always want to be a better person. I do believe greatly in karma. So, I remember times when I've done something, I thought, oh, it's not good for my karma. I need to fix that, right? So you have to go and you have to sort that out. Um, so I think that's good. And I think, again, that's why at the start of the charity, I thought, I'm not going to do it this way because it's negative. And I lost quite a few with it. the fathers who came at that point, because they wanted to take the system down. Um, and that's not how I want it to be. Again, it's doing things in a positive manner, in a professional manner as well.
Mhm.
Always.
And I'm curious, I note that you don't want to take the system down, but I'm also interested, what would it take for James's Ark to be unnecessary? What would it take in terms of community or individuals or the environment, the world? Because as much as you do great work, it's quite sad that that great work is even necessary.
Mm. So um, we had the well, recently there was a campaign.
Mhm.
I'm going to speak about it. So there was the Violence Against Women and Girls campaign, and as much as I believe they're doing great work, it causes more division between
Mhm.
us. And what I've seen recently, and again, this is what I say to some of the fathers in the groups, and
Mhm.
um, we don't want division. And
Mhm.
I believe by bringing mothers on board, what
Mhm.
we're doing is we're saying, this isn't about us and them.
Mhm.
This is about a larger issue. This is about where we need to work together as a family. The family unit is continuously now. There's more divorce, there's more separation, there's more children losing contact with one parent. So just because families are separated, it doesn't mean that they still can't get along, that they still can't parent each other. So we're now stepping in as a even just through emails, just kind of discussing things like, okay, if she's got an issue or if he's got an issue, they bring it to us and we try and kind of say, right, well, I'll speak to him or I'll speak to her and let's address this. So I think I would love for James's art not to exist, right? And that can be our primary goal.
Mhm.
That we don't need the service anymore, and we step back from that. And yeah, again, it's not about us and them. It's about mothers and fathers working together for their children because the impact it actually has on the children is well. I mean, we spoke about this, and there's long term effects, even just a divorce.
Mhm.
That impacts a child. And my mom and dad aren't together anymore. It's quite sad. You're in the house together, mummy and daddy are together, and that's an impact enough without the high conflict arguments. You're not having them this weekend, you're not having her this weekend, you're not seeing them, you haven't paid your maintenance. There's all sorts of stuff that happens, and it impacts the child.
Because of the divorce rate and frankly, sort of a different way of living that exists now to perhaps say 30, 40, 50 years ago. Do you think there's a greater understanding of the challenges and issues, or perhaps actually people really don't understand sometimes the impact? Because if the divorce rate is, or separation rate, because not everyone's married, of course, um, is circa 50%, then you would assume that half the world actually properly understood this. And yet, speaking with you and the work that we did together, I get the impression that perhaps people don't really fully understand the impact.
No, I don't think it's spoken about enough. I don't think it's publicized enough. I mean, it's you have parents who were already separated and the baby's not even born.
Hmm.
And you have fathers who aren't even put on the birth certificate and they have to meet their child for the first time through a court system.
Hmm.
It's tragic. Like that is the start of a baby's life.
Hmm.
That is the start. And I mean, it's not spoken about enough. And I believe one thing I've realized since doing this work is Jersey family court system is actually a lot better than
Hmm.
most. They've got some great people at work there. I never thought I'd say that, but they
Hmm.
do. I've had to open my mind and see only doing this work if I realized how tough their job is.
Hmm.
Um, and then you have the backlash from other agencies who were, well, your favoritism towards fathers, your favoritism towards mothers, and they have to sit in the middle there, right? But it doesn't matter about the mothers and the fathers. I'll look after their well-being as best I can. It matters about the child and the child having a relationship with both parents. That is the priority.
And you touched on different agencies. I mean, frankly, the voluntary sector, I mean, one of the things that's great about the voluntary sector in Jersey is it's significant. I mean, there are an awful lot of people working in the voluntary sector, and it's quite big business. There's a lot of fundraising, etc. But I can imagine at times it can be a little chaotic to navigate. I mean, what's your experience at working with multiple agencies?
Yeah, it. I've tried to reach out to quite a few of the agencies in the voluntary sector as well.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think charities work together enough.
Hmm.
I've done some good work with caring cooks. They've been brilliant. We've done the family dinner nights, which is really
Hmm.
good. Um, there are agencies I've tried to reach out to more and more, which, I believe that more charities should be working together more. And this is another thing that I've tried to do last year. I'm going to try and do it again this year, um, to bring people together, bring charities together, work together, um, because charities do some fantastic work. They do some great work. And I've worked in government, and government, I worked it back to work for 5 years, and I loved it there. I
Hmm.
learned so much from that job. So much, and it was a great place to work.
Tell me about that, because it strikes me that, in some respects, may have been the foundation of your experience. Because I know you've also been with Sanctuary before you became full time with James Ark. So you're
Mm.
clearly somebody who is beyond a social conscience. I mean, you're socially active. You're there helping people. I mean, what has that lived experience been like for you?
So I've always wanted to help people. It's always been in me to do that. And I mean, from my own experience when I was younger and my own experiences when I was a teenager, and um, I've always wanted to do that. And I started off my helping people career, obviously going through certain 12-step programs, but then I got into Shelter Trust.
Mhm.
I worked there. There was some great training there. Then I left. Worked at a youth hostel there as well. Then I went back to work through Social Security. And I got loads of training there, loads of experience, and I've used all the stuff in my life that I've done through college, through A levels, and things I've all pieced it all together to run James's Ark and to set James Ark. So I've used things from every different model I've learned. Um, and the method of with back to work, they have kind of different things they do. So I'm trying to think where it's so there was the barriers, which I really liked. So if someone comes to get a job, it's not like you have to get a job. If you don't get a job, you're sanctioned, or this happens, or that happened. Um, so what they'll do if someone comes, they will support them to reduce the barriers to employment. And
Mhm.
what I've done with some of the fathers, say there's a father who has issues with addiction or mental health, or he's got barriers to him seeing his child.
Mhm.
So it's not you come here, right? You've got these barriers. You've done this wrong. You've done that wrong. You can't see your child. It's like, right, how can we work with this guy?
Mhm.
Okay, so there's addiction. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll try and address that. You're drinking too much. So we'll work with him around that. And then whether we refer him to AA or we refer him to drug and alcohol, we refer him to Silkworth. So we can refer them to these places, but they have to want to do
Mhm.
the work. I think that was a really good model we used from Back to Work. I think so. We've used it, but we've twisted it in the sense of right. We reduce the barriers to seeing their children. I mean, so you look at I've done a blog actually on the unattached male, which was really interesting. I've read so many books like about what I'm doing, and I've done quite a lot of courses as well. And I'm on another course at the minute. I don't know where I get the time, but I managed to do it. So it was really interesting when you look at when we are fathers are not being able to see their children, they actually become more dangerous to society, you
Hmm.
know. And I kind of look at my life and I think, right, if I'm walking down the street and someone bumps into me or badmouths me or, you know, gets aggressive with me in a shopping queue or
Hmm.
wants to have a fight with me, I'm gonna, the old me probably would have done it because I had nothing to live for, right? But today I have my family to live for. I have my job to live for. So this protects society because I'm less dangerous because I have all these people around me that well, I don't want to get involved in that. I don't want to
Hmm.
steal because I go to prison because I won't be able to see my kids. I don't want to take drugs because I've got my family. I don't want to be violent because I've got my family. So it actually protects by having fathers involved with their kids. We protect society as a whole. And
Hmm.
we've been using that with some prisoners of giving them that carrot, you know, um, and it gives them something to live for. Obviously, if they're dangerous and it puts the child in any danger, then you know, yes, that doesn't go ahead. But you work with them around that anyway, because obviously, again, it's always the child that's the priority.
I'm interested. You make a really good point that you read a lot, you study, you put yourself on courses. So you do have a combination of lived experience, practical experience, as well as theoretical knowledge.
Hmm.
And I don't want to drag you towards politics. I think that might be unfair unless you willingly dive in that direction. But I am interested in the difference between theory and practice, policy and reality, what an economy or a community thinks it's doing, and the reality of what's happening. You know, what are your thoughts about the gap, if indeed there is any, between the theory and the practice, the policy and the reality?
So I think we are in a generation right now, um, where there is a lot of confusion. And I think like with in regards to what James Ark is trying to achieve and how the policies are set up in Jersey, do they benefit families? You know, do they benefit separate families? Do they benefit, you know, the relationship between the child and both parents? I don't think they do. You know, I think we are I know as a charity, why do I get so many people come to James's Ark? You know, I don't publicize it as much because I haven't got resources to support people. Um, we don't get any government funding, we don't get any support from government, but there we do a lot of work for government. I think these people have just been left to rot. Um, there was no help, there was no support for these fathers, and even with the mothers. I mean, what we're offering. Um, it's saving lives, you know, and it's changing lives. And I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, some of the people, it's changed my life, you know, to see, like, wow, this is so needed. You know, this is actually doing a lot. And we're getting quite a lot of good feedback from family lawyers, which is good, you know, and some of them probably at the start thought, oh, not another one of them, you
Mhm.
know. But they're seeing that we're doing things in a professional and a positive way, and we want to do what's best. And I've also had to learn. I say I've also had to learn that not to step on their toes, let them do their work where they need to. I'm not a lawyer. I've been told off before, so you know these are all learning curves. So and it's giving them back respect. So I think one of the things I've always done when I contact families, when I contact lawyers, kill them with kindness. You know, going back with conflict is only going to raise conflict, and that's what I always say to people. But I think the island can do a lot more. I get concerned that this new campaign that's been brought out is going to make it more difficult for fathers, and I continue to say fathers because it's the fathers who lose contact with the children.
Mhm.
So the policies that they're going to bring out, where the family courts seem to be, from what I'm seeing, going in the right direction. I'm not saying they always get it right, but they seem to be going in the right direction of making sure the child has a relationship with both parents. I'm hoping there aren't policies put in place where there's going to be so much protection for mothers that the children then lose contact with the father. So that is my concern. I think we need to be focusing on um, the children. Like the family course is more for the children. It's not for the mothers. I think we need to get away from that. We need to understand that child. If the child's not in danger and the father is capable of having a relationship with that child, we should be encouraging that, and both mothers and fathers should be doing the same.
And one of the things that I was thinking when I asked the question, and perhaps it was in terms of policy and reality and theory and practice. I mean, government isn't the sole component of the community. Clearly, we've got organizations, but we also have businesses and we have individuals. And we live in a world where, on the one hand, we demand more productivity. Everyone's always on. They're working harder and longer. Now, increasingly, both parents need to work. Indeed,
Yeah.
in circumstances, both parents may actually have even two jobs. But that's not always the case. There are plus signs. We have an environment where perhaps increasingly there's more flexibility around work as much as there is 24/7 working. So, I mean, what can employers or other agencies other than government do to create a better environment for happier families?
Yeah, so I do I don't agree that two parents have to be working all the time. And I mean some people might not like this, but um I think when you've got both the mother and the father at work full time, working till 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, right? Which I have seen, who's bringing that child up? Some parents are having to put their children in childcare from 6 months old,
Mm-hmm.
and who's bringing the child up? So that they're not building. And I know I understand this is where we are financially crippling,
Mm-hmm.
families. I struggle financially. It's tough. And, you get back from work, then your partner goes out to work. How is families going to stay together? And you want to make that time for date nights. And that's what you're seeing is, parents are being forced into having to work ridiculous hours just to live, to put food on the table for their families, to pay the rent. And then the children are getting minimal time during the week, and then you've got to do the homework and everything else that goes on top of that, and then you've also some parents have to work weekends as well. So we're wondering why this may be the reason, may not be the reason, but you're wondering why children are having more mental health issues, not having a stronger bond with their parents as they should be having. Um, there's probably a lot of and single households. How do they do it? How do they if they've got to work and there's no father present or there's no mother present and they're single on their own with children, how are they managing to do it? It's tough, and those children aren't getting that. And that's why you have two parents, one can step in, brain break, right? I need a brain break. I need to go and chill out. Give me the code, right? Time out. So parents need to have that time out. And then the other parent will step in. You're getting stressed. I mean, I can, with my partner, if she's, if my son and my daughter, it is winding her up and she's trying to do the dinner, I'll have to step in. I can see the signs, so I'll step in. Come on, go on, let's go and do this and
Mm-hmm.
bring him away. So single parent households don't have that, and this may be it. It brings me on to the next thing. This may be where we're seeing the impact on children being raised in single parent households. You look at the stats around that, which are on the website, and I mean I can firsthand say from people close to me
Mm-hmm.
and jobs I've done. I've worked in youth hostels, I've done work in prisons, and the dads I've worked with, I always ask the question, what was it like with your parents? And these are the dads that are the ones that have, heightened emotion, drug problems. Single parent households didn't have a father around, they didn't have that role model.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at these stats, and that people can always throw a stat out there,
Mm-hmm.
and just to make things, look bad. But I've looked at these cases rather than stats. I've looked at cases and put them next to the stats, and children I went to school with,
Mm-hmm.
drugs, prison, abuse, violent. single, didn't have a father in their lives. So like I'm shocked that there's not more policy around that for children.
And I recognize that in most cases, single parent families will be the mother. Um, but is that actually also true where it's the father?
Well, a study I've seen,
Hmm.
a study I've actually seen, it shows that fathers actually do better as single parents. That's just the facts I've seen, and this isn't being disrespectful. This is a case study I've seen. I Around that, you do get single parent households. Mothers can do a fantastic job, where they've got their stuff together,
Hmm.
they've got a routine, they've got structure. They may have a very supportive father themselves. And these things can't be diminished. But I think sometimes it may be the single parent households where they've disrupted the contact with the father.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to say this as
Yeah,
nicely as I can,
yeah.
um, because I don't want to disrespect anybody. I'm just going off of like studies that I've looked at and that I've seen. Um, and I think you've got some great mothers out there who have done it on their own, and I think fair play to them. Maybe the father didn't want to be involved, but
Mhm.
then you do get some studies where, well, but the percentages where they do struggle a lot. Single mothers, the children in them households struggle a lot because you need two parents. But then a study someone sent to me, and I've researched it, where it said that single fathers actually can do just as well as a two-parent household, and that is just what I've seen. That's the stats I've seen. That may be because with fathers, they are quite disciplined. They are a little bit more strict. They kind of encourage children to do more things on their own. And when I've worked with mums and dads, I've seen this is where men and women are so supposed to work together, because men are from Mars, women are from Venus, as they say, right? Um, there will be the mother who will be speaking to me, and she's more iPad. There's the iPad, makes it a little bit easier. And then you have this side of diagnosis. I want to get the child diagnosed. I want to get the child medicated. Um, and then you have the father. When I'm speaking to the father on their side, um, they're like, nothing wrong with them. Doesn't need a diagnosis. Don't want them on that medication. Don't want them on that iPad. So, and I'm not disagreeing with either of them. I'll sit in the middle. But I think this is where they come together. And this is why, when they're together, they would come to a mutual agreement of, right, father, probably being a bit too hard. Mother, you're probably being a bit too soft. Let's meet in the middle. Okay. Let's do this together. Otherwise, it's going to be too far one end, too far the other end.
I think it's fair to say that it can be a very complex issue, and men and women are different, but that doesn't mean to say they're not equal. And I
Mm,
think you've made the point very well that the best environment is for two supportive and loving parents, and
yeah.
that gender distinct at all. That's just recognizing the challenge of raising children. It's a pretty big and very important job, and having two people support each other do that is a
Yeah.
good way forward. I think one of the things that would be very useful, if we can include either a link to your website or any reports, if anyone's really interested in following this up, we'll include that with this podcast.
Yeah.
If you were giving advice um, to either a father, a mother, somebody who's running a business and employing people, or possibly one of our new politicians, what would be your reflections on what each of us can do to make things just a little better?
I think if it was politicians, I mean, the whole island, to be honest with you, I mean, I've never ever thought about leaving Jersey. I mean, it's sad that I actually think in my head, God, it's only that I've got my daughter here, who was with my ex-partner, that I can't. Um, But rents prices need to be dropped a lot, um, if they can be, because it's greed. You know, you've got people with loads of properties over here that don't need to be charging the amount of rent that they're charging. That would support families more. Um, Food prices, why is the GST on food? You know, that would support families more. In regards to David Warr, let's not forget what he done. You know, he's been slated, and I want to say this: he actually got the extra bedroom for separated families for fathers. That was a big thing, and it wasn't spoken about. That you had families separating, and it was only mainly the mother who got Andium homes, and then the father would have to go into a bedsit because they wouldn't house two parents, which I understood that, and I was actually quite shocked that that actually got overturned.
Mhm.
So they've now got a bedroom where a father can have his children overnight. It was left that that father would have to get a bed sit. That would then be used against them. You haven't got suitable accommodation. You can't have a child overnight. The child suffers. So that was a really good, what you've done was brilliant. And I think looking at more things like that, you know, around separated families, also for the public, you know, if you see that, you know, that a parent is disrupting contact with the child, speak up. Just like
Mhm.
we speak up with domestic violence, speak up, because that is, you're alienating a child from a parent. And again, they don't like that. Oh, don't say parental alienation. It's not real. Well, if a parent is disrupting contact with another parent, you're alienating. That's what alienation is. You're alienating that child from the parent. You know, so it does actually impact that child long term. You're teaching the child hate as well. So if you are saying things um, to some of these children, you know, your father said this about you, your father doesn't like you, he's violent to me. Keep the child out of it. Keep the child out of your squabbles.
Mhm.
And I think people should be speaking up on stuff like that and saying that that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. And that's what I say to some of the dads or the mums I work with. I'll quite openly say that's not right behaviour. I mean, you've seen some of the guys we've done a little bit of work with, and you know,
Yeah.
I've had to say, look, I'm not engaging in that behaviour. That is
Mhm.
not what I'm here for. I'm actually here to support you to have a relationship with your child. I'm not here to condone your domestic abuse. Or so, you know, it's speaking up and saying things, and more people need to be raising the issues.
And I think you make a really good point, and I think you're a great ambassador. You are not shy on challenging stuff, but I think you've demonstrated that you are prepared to see both sides, to do your research, to do the courses. You have a tremendous amount of lived experience working with many people over a number of years, but you also have taken the time to sort of fact check because, of course, one person's lived experience may be unusual, abnormal,
Yeah,
anomaly. Um, and so to blend that with my experience, other people's experience, what does the data say? I think,
yeah.
serves you well in a subject area that can be very controversial.
And this may be where I'm saying, and I'm skating back to that, where the data says single fathers do better. That may only be because there are not many single fathers out there, right? That could be why that data's there.
Or
Um,
indeed, there are circumstances that advantage men. I mean, look, a lot of
yeah,
people can say,
financial.
yeah, there are
Yeah,
lots of circumstances that may be seen as more beneficial to men than to women.
yeah,
So we
and
have,
that could be it. Yeah, I just want to kind of get that. So I, I'm not someone who wants to be critical of either parent, right? I want to be as fair as possible, and that may be why that data is there, because of there may be more financial support for men, because as they say that, well, I don't know, we won't go into the equal pay gap, right? We'll leave that one.
whole new podcast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But look, thank you very much indeed. This has been revealing. As I say, it's not without its challenges. I am super impressed by your sort of business intelligence. Running a charity is very difficult, Okay, you're effectively asking people to give you money. I mean, if you think sales is hard, try selling something where there is no product.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and the sheer range of people that you support, and I know that from the small amount of work that we've done together. Um, we will include links with the podcast so that anyone who wants to get in contact with you can.
yeah.
What would be your sort of parting reflections, advice, or even reflections on what happens next? What happens next for you? What happens next for James Ark? What should happen next for anyone right now who is watching this and is touched by any part of our conversation?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's got any questions, get in contact. I'm very open to meet people. Probably too open. That's probably why I'm so busy. But I mean, I am open to meet people. The work I'm doing is coming from my heart and my soul. I want to make a difference. I think if more people speak up and more people look at the bigger picture of all in a long-term impact rather than thinking short-term, I don't want them to see the child. Think long-term.
Mhm.
Think of the impact long-term, and also get in contact for support around that. And we can maybe break down reasons why. Um, James's Ark's next steps. I always think big. I did believe because obviously I wouldn't have been here today. Um, but it's got big very quick. So making an impact is my priority. Bringing more mothers on board is my priority. Um, Helping parents to work together, empowering parents to work together for their children. And we would like to get more fundraising, definitely, but then I need more staff to get a fundraiser to be able to raise funds for the charity because I am wearing 20 different hats. And this year we've got a set target of how many fathers we want to get reconnected. We've
Mhm.
got a set target of how many mothers we want to support as well. We've got set targets of co-parenting agreements. So one of the things is getting the parents to agree between themselves without any outside influences. So yeah, and I
A
think
real
it's,
period of growth, positivity, ambition. And
yeah, definitely.
James, thank you very much indeed. It's been a delight seeing you and talking with you and sharing your story on this podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Thank you.